Today is the day you finally paint your house. At least the outside of it. Maybe you just finally decide on a color palette that would work. We got some exterior color combinations to talk about, and these are all coming by way of Sherwin-Williams. I have a relatively varied set of color combos that can give your house that curb appeal it deserves. Because that's what exterior colors do after all. It's the literal first impression of your home. If the outside doesn't look right, no one's gonna want to come inside and see that gorgeous onyx floor you just installed in the hallway. The point is, picking the right colors for your exterior does wonders for the overall look of your home. Your neighbors are gonna love ya. These color combos consist of 3 separate colors. We have the main color, or the body of the house. You then have a trim color, which could also include railings, gables, or pillars, and then our fun little accent color. More often than not, the accent is going to be the front door or the shutters. You may think that the accent color also includes the garage door, but why would you want to accentuate that? Unless you have some really sweet looking garage doors, then it's a different story. But for most people, it's just kind of a plain old big square, or 2, or more. We're going to start with some taupe color palettes. That's largely because of the relationship that warmer colors have with outdoor lighting. Especially when you're working with neutrals, I always tend to favor warmer ones rather than cooler ones because the sunlight is going to bluify a lot of the colors that you put on your house. So you want to combat that with some nice warmer tones. A nice solid body color would be TAVERN taupe, which is more alongside brown rather than gray, and its pretty low LRV of 27 really shows you how deep it is, but that's actually a good thing with exterior paint. When colors are outside in the blazing hot sun, they're going to feel lighter than you think. Now if you use this color inside, super dark accent color. But on the outside, it's a completely usable main body color. Now, an accompanying trim color to go alongside it would be yet another warm neutral in Minimalist. Not the color that I necessarily equate to minimalism, as it has quite a bit of depth with an LRV of 52, but it sort of has a very passive set of undertones that is really just grayish at the end of the day. Pretty minimal in the excitement category. For a lot of people. But just like the last color, we have another unusually dark color, especially when we're talking about trim. This is the lighter color of the 2 for sure, but it ends up being a mid-tone, all things considered. Normally when you think of trim colors, especially me, you think of off-whites, but exterior colors are different because of the increased amount of lighting that's happening. You get way more light outside than you do inside. These 2 colors have undertones that mesh really well because they both have that taupe feel to them. And even though neither of them are very light, there's still a 30 LRV difference approximately between them, which gives some nice clean lines to your home. And also a quick little bonus tip, when you have 2 colors that are relatively dark as your main body and your trim color, you can sometimes interchange them and flip them around, where you put Minimalist as your main body color and then TAVERN taupe as your trim color. You couldn't do that if you were using white trim, because if you put a bright white trim color on your body of the house, it's gonna look crazy fluorescent, which you might be into, but again, you gotta think about your neighbors as well. For the accent color here, I think it's a good idea to stay within that warm color palette. Not that you need to, but it's just the more natural option for a lot of people. And if you've been following us on Instagram, which I highly encourage if you want daily exclusive content from us, no pressure, link below, I talked about a fun fact relating to front door colors, more specifically red doors. There are many cultural explanations for why some people choose to paint their front door red, but in Scotland, a red door used to be a sign that you have officially paid off your mortgage. So, if you go ahead and use a color like CRABBY apple on your front door, maybe that dream of financial independence will manifest somehow. I hope. CRABBY apple has a lot going for it as an accent color, especially in this warm neutral landscape we're working in currently. It's deep and fiery and almost has a sun-dried tomato brown orange touch, and this is so important with reds that are outside. I always tend to favor the more burgundy side of red rather than strawberry or cherry red, because when that direct sunlight affects the undertones in that red, it'll do so in the cooler direction. You don't want a pinky red door. So by going in the more taupe or even slightly orange direction, at least in the deep undertones, you can help combat that. Now it's only fair to also cater to the cooler color fans as well. So we're gonna work with the cooler color palette too, but we're not gonna get too cool because just as a reminder, the sun's all about coolifying your exterior colors. And if you're thinking that I'm about to show you a slightly cool gray, you're wrong, unless you have a really specific standard as to what's classified as gray. It's a beautiful color called Mediterranean, which is a really fun main body color. I guess it has a touch of gray in it, and it's not necessarily the exact tone of blue that I think of when I picture the Mediterranean, and actually it looks a bit desaturated online, but in person, outside, the color's vibrance really comes to life. The fun thing is, you don't even necessarily need to use this modestly. This kind of goes back to the whole neighbor narrative we're talking about. So if you're surrounded by a bunch of gray and beige, then it's up to you whether or not you want to deviate and be the outlier of your neighborhood. But because you're not picking a blue like this, it's still going to give your house a slightly polite feeling blue that is not too overly obnoxious. It's even perhaps a bit too subdued for a place like Ålesund, Norway, which I got the pleasure of visiting. Humble brag. For a second trim color, we're going to get back into some of the off-whites, but not necessarily one that's all that bright. Coming in at a 79 LRV, I would recommend ivory lace as a paired color. It's soft and delicate, kind of like the name suggests. And believe me, a good name makes a good color. Ivory lace has that nice creamy warmth, but it's not overly yellow, which would detract from the blue in Mediterranean. Instead, it has a creamy base and just a touch of taupe to tone it in somewhat. Unlike our last color combination, I'd be less inclined to switch up these two, but anything is possible.
Anything's possible!
The accent color in this case would be a fairly complementary one in the color Meadowlark. This is a fairly deep brown that has a bit of gold warmth to it, not enough to make it feel greeny. Not that there's anything wrong with green. Who else is on the green bandwagon with me this year? Have you seen that accent wall? Mwah. What's nice about Meadowlark is it's a similar brown that you would find in quite a bit of stained woods. So if you have a modest sized front deck or a stained front door, the complementary nature that it would have with the body of the house would look really good. The nice part is you don't even need to invest in front door paint. If you just got a brown wood front door, there you go. There's your completed color combo. It saves you about a quart of paint. Hey, every little bit counts, right? For our last color combination, I want to start with the cleanest exterior trim color you can probably get by Sherwin-Williams. So let's start with that. Extra White has an LRV of 86, and although it doesn't inherently have any blue or cool colorant within it, it's so stark and crisp that it really does feel quite radioactive with how bright it looks. Please do not use this as your main house body color. And this is not a dare or a challenge, just don't do it. But when it's used on trim in smaller doses to accentuate cool looking trim or pillars, then it really does a fantastic job at doing that. Because it is pretty bright when used outside, I also tend to favor it with good old gray. Not just any gray, the highly coveted rare gray. That's the name of the color. It ends up looking like a mid-tone looking color in the exterior world, but the nice part about rare gray is the gray-green aspect of it, which looks phenomenal outside. The green in rare gray is really nice in daylight, and although it's still going to look more gray rather than green, it doesn't have the problem of other exterior grays that go into blue territory when that really wasn't what you were going for. The third accent color we're going to talk about, which has another incredible name, it's a deep navy blue that has just the slightest touch of yellow to brighten it up a bit, even though it has a mega low LRV of 5. The color that you want to paint your front door in this situation is Salty Dog. We're not talking about a delicious treat that I crave every month or so for some reason. Also not the beverage. This color probably relates to the nickname that sailors sometimes call themselves when they spend a majority of their life at sea. There's something about this color that reflects the deep blue ocean. And if you want to do an even better job at reflecting that, I would recommend using a higher gloss finish for your front door. It'll really create a stunning effect, but you just want to make sure that your front door is in fairly good shape, if possible brand new, otherwise any tiny imperfections will be overly accentuated. If you're not yet ready to commit to one of these color palettes, here are 5 tips on making your own exterior color choices so you can get real creative with it. Just some little tools for you to use. I'm happy to help.